He saved 75 men on a battlefield in Okinawa. He never fired a single shot. His own army had spent 2 years trying to get rid of him. His name was Desmond Doss. President Truman awarded him the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. He accepted it without ever having touched a weapon. Stay until the end, because the war he fought before Okinawa was fought against his own country, and he won that one too. The Boy and the Gun. Desmond Doss was born in 1919 in Lynchburg, Virginia, the second of 3 children in a family held together by faith and strained by everything else. His father, Tom Doss, had come home from the First World War with wounds that didn't show on the outside, the kind that made a man reach for a bottle when the nights got too loud inside his own head. Desmond was 6 years old when he saw his father hold a gun to his uncle's head during a drunken argument. His mother pulled them apart. The gun came down. Nobody died that day. But something settled into the boy watching from the doorway, a certainty so deep it would never move. No matter what anyone said or did to him afterward, he would never hold a weapon. He would never take a life. Not because he was afraid, but because he had decided, at 6 years old, that some things were simply not for him. The Doss family were Seventh-day Adventists, and their faith was not decorative. It was structural. It shaped how they ate, how they rested, how they measured time, and how they understood their obligations to other human beings. Desmond grew up believing that the Sabbath was sacred, that the body was a temple, and that the commandment against killing was not a suggestion. These were not abstract theological positions. They were the architecture of who he was. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Desmond Doss was working at a shipyard in Newport News, building ships for a war he had not yet joined. His job qualified him for a military deferment. The government needed shipbuilders as much as it needed soldiers. He could have stayed. He had every legal and practical reason to stay. He volunteered anyway, not to fight, to heal. He enlisted as a combat medic, a soldier whose job is to run toward the wounded under fire, to keep men alive until they can be carried somewhere safer. He would serve his country in the only way he could, without a weapon, without violence, on the most dangerous ground imaginable. His commanding officers looked at his enlistment forms and assumed it was a misunderstanding. It was not. What followed was not a welcome. It was a war, fought entirely by the people who were supposed to be on his side. The enemy within. The United States Army in 1942 had a specific place for men who refused to carry weapons. It was called the stockade. Conscientious objectors were not celebrated. They were suspected, mocked, and in many cases prosecuted. The military had built its entire culture around the rifle, and a man who refused to touch one was, in the eyes of his peers and his commanders, not a soldier at all. He was a liability. He was a coward hiding behind religion. He was a problem to be solved. Desmond Doss was assigned to the 77th Infantry Division, Company B, 307th Infantry Regiment. From his first day, his fellow soldiers made clear that he was not wanted. They called him a coward. They called him a religious fanatic. At night, when he knelt beside his bunk to pray, boots flew across the barracks toward him, thrown by men who found his faith embarrassing or threatening or simply strange. He picked them up quietly and went back to his prayers. His commanding officer tried to have him discharged on psychiatric grounds. The paperwork went up the chain of command and came back unsigned. The Army's medical evaluators found nothing wrong with him. He was, by every measurable standard, completely sound, physically, mentally, emotionally. He simply believed what he believed, and no examination was going to change that. Then came the court-martial. Doss refused to handle a weapon during training on a Saturday, his Sabbath, a day his faith designated as sacred and separate from all other activities, including military ones. His commanding officer brought him up on charges. The prosecution argued that a soldier who refused direct orders was a danger to his unit and unfit for service. Doss stood before the military court and explained, quietly and without apology, that he had volunteered to serve his country and would serve it gladly, in any capacity that did not require him to violate his conscience. The court-martial ended without a conviction. His faith held. His unit told him they would not take him into combat. Some said it more directly than that if he went into battle with them, he would not come back. The threat was real enough that Doss reported it. Nothing changed. He continued training. He continued praying. He continued being exactly who he was, inside a system that had decided it did not want him. None of it moved him. Not the boots. Not the court-martial. Not the threats. He had not enlisted because he expected to be welcomed. He had enlisted because he believed it was right. The reception was, in the end, irrelevant. He survived his own army. Then came Okinawa, and the men who had thrown boots at him would owe him their lives. Hacksaw Ridge. The Maida Escarpment rises 400 feet from the plains of Okinawa, a sheer wall of rock and earth that the American soldiers who had to climb it called Hacksaw Ridge. At the top, the Japanese had built one of the most fortified positions of the entire Pacific War. Tunnels carved into the rock, bunkers reinforced with concrete, machine gun positions that covered every approach. The soldiers climbing the rope ladders to reach the top did so with a grim certainty. They knew that the men waiting for them had been ordered to fight to the last man, and fully intended to. Company B scaled the ridge and fought through the day of May 5, 1945, advancing yard by bloody yard across ground that offered no cover and no mercy. They took positions. They lost positions. They took them back. When evening came, the Japanese counterattacked with an overwhelming force, a wave of soldiers emerging from the tunnels and bunkers in such numbers that the Americans had no choice. The order came to retreat, to go back down the rope ladders, to leave the ridge. In the chaos of the retreat, approximately 75 wounded American soldiers were left behind on top of the ridge. They could not climb down on their own. Some were unconscious. Some could not stand. The Japanese were advancing, and there was no time. And there were not enough men, and the decision was made that could not be unmade. They would have to be left. Desmond Doss did not go down. He stayed on the ridge, alone, without a weapon, in the darkness of a battlefield where Japanese soldiers were moving through the shadows around him, and he began to work. He found a wounded man. He dragged him to the edge of the cliff. He had fashioned a rope into a lowering system using a knot he had learned as a boy, and he lowered the man down the face of the escarpment to safety below. Then he went back. He found another man. He dragged him to the edge. He lowered him down. Then he went back. He did this for hours, in the dark, under fire, alone, moving through a battlefield littered with the dead, finding the living, pulling them through the dirt and the blood toward the cliff edge, lowering them one by one to the ground below. Between each rescue, he prayed the same prayer, for words that became the rhythm of that night, the thing that kept him moving when his body wanted to stop. Lord, let me get one more. One more, always one more. Not the 75. Not the impossible total. Just one more, the man closest to him in the darkness, the man whose breathing he could hear, the man who had not yet been left behind. He did not think about the whole. He thought about the next one, and then the next one after that. By the time dawn came, and the ridge had gone quiet enough for the men below to realize what had happened, 75 soldiers had come down the cliff face, every one of them alive. If you're enjoying this story, hit like and subscribe. There are many more like this waiting for you. Now, back to Desmond Doss. What he cost himself. Desmond Doss did not come down from Hacksaw Ridge unharmed. In the weeks that followed, as Company B continued to fight across Okinawa, he remained with his unit. still without a weapon, still running toward the wounded under fire, still doing the only thing he had ever agreed to do. A grenade landed near him. He kicked it away. The explosion caught him anyway, fragments tearing into his legs in 17 places. He dressed his own wounds and waited for help to come. While he waited, a more severely wounded man arrived. Doss gave him his stretcher and told the men carrying it to take the other soldier first. Then he crawled 300 yards across open ground to reach safety on his own. 3 hours later, a sniper's bullet found him. It struck his arm and shattered the bone. He had, lying on the ground, no splint and no medic. He looked at what was available. There was a rifle nearby, left behind by someone. Loaded, functional. He picked it up. He used it as a splint for his broken arm. He never fired it. He never loaded a round into the chamber. He used it, in the end, the only way he had ever been willing to, not as a weapon, but as a tool to keep himself alive long enough to be useful. He was evacuated. He spent the rest of the war recovering from wounds that would affect him for the remainder of his life. The fragments in his legs were never fully removed. He lost partial hearing from the grenade blast. He was eventually diagnosed with tuberculosis, contracted during his time in the Pacific, and spent years recovering from that as well. He was 26 years old when the war ended. He came home to Lynchburg, Virginia, to his family and his faith, permanently and irreversibly altered by what he had done and what it had cost him. On October 12, 1945, President Harry Truman placed the Medal of Honor around Desmond Doss's neck at a ceremony in Washington. Truman, who had authorized the atomic bombs that ended the Pacific War, looked at the young man from Virginia and said something that has been quoted many times since, that he was prouder to meet Doss than to be president. Doss was the first conscientious objector in American history to receive the Medal of Honor in combat. He was also the only one in World War II. The men of Company B, the men who had thrown boots at him in the barracks, who had threatened him, who had said they would never take him into combat, had their own ceremony before the official one. They gathered around him and apologized, not formally, not with speeches, but in the way that men apologize when they have no adequate words for what they did and what was done for them in return. Some of them wept. Doss accepted their apologies with the same quiet composure he had brought to everything else. He did not say he had forgiven them. He had never stopped. He lived until 2006. He was 87 years old. He spent his later years speaking to young people about faith, about service, about what it means to hold to something so tightly that nothing, not mockery, not court-martial, not the threat of violence, can pull it from your hands. He never glorified what he had done on the ridge. He spoke about it the way a man speaks about something that happened through him rather than by him, as if the 75 rescues were less his achievement and more his obligation, the natural consequence of being who he was in the place he was in. There is a version of the Desmond Doss story that focuses on the ridge, on the 75 men, the rope, the prayer, the impossible night. That version is true and it is extraordinary. But the version that stays with me is the earlier one. The boy in the barracks, kneeling to pray while boots flew at him from across the room, not flinching, not leaving, not compromising a single thing about who he was, because he had decided at 6 years old, watching his father lower a gun, that some things were not negotiable. The ridge was the proof, but the barracks was the test, and he passed it quietly and completely, long before anyone was watching. If this story stayed with you, and I think it will, there are many more waiting, stories that history forgot or chose to ignore. Subscribe, and I'll bring you one every week. And if you know someone who would have stayed until the end of this video, send it to them. That's how these stories survive.